Trojans live. So the Nevada game, I think this is probably going to be the least discussed game of the whole season. It's going to be the game that we're going to forget more easily than any other, fewer memorable moments than the other. I mean, you did have Caleb Williams making that absolutely sensational play, and you had some really special moments for the defense, and also Quentin Joyner as well. That's a really fun moment for him. But in the big picture, we're not going to place a whole lot of importance on this Nevada game. And, you didn't have quite as much of a spicy dialogue surrounding the defense as you did in week one. We just saw Oregon State. Oregon State's defense shut down San Jose State. So you compare that to what USC did against San Jose State. The Trojan, that shows that the Trojan defense had a lot of work to do. This week, not nearly as many problems on the defense. And if you read my report card article, which comes at you Sundays after every USC football game at Trojans Wire, better grades. But I mean, you can read the article for the details, but generally better grades for USC than the week before against San Jose State. Things got cleaned up, and Tim, you can talk about this as well. Want to get you in on this. No Mason Cobb, no Eric Gentry. So that gave a lot of other linebackers and a lot of other players more playing time. And I continue to this is the best thing I like about the coaching staff through 2 games, Tim. They're playing tons of players. They were treating these games like preseason games, scrimmages, however you want to call them. That's exactly the right approach. You don't want to overextend anybody. You want to give everybody meaningful reps, considerable chance of playing time to understand, how to perform in live action. It can't just be theory. You got to be thrown into the fire. Perfect time to do it, and make sure that your guys are fresh for the long haul and for the biggest games of the season, starting from mid-October onward. Love the coaching staff rotating lots of players. But with, Cobb and Gentry out, and, one would think that, if this was Notre Dame, if this was Utah, they would have been playing. But Nevada, you do not have to do that. You do not have to play them. So, an easy decision, if there's any doubt about their health, sit them out. You're not losing anything at all. You can certainly afford to do that. And so with, a lot of backups cycling through and a lot of guys getting a chance to play, you saw a fairly responsible, contained defensive performance. And I think the defensive line in particular, and hey, it is only Nevada, that caveat exists, and we have to just put it out there to make absolutely sure. We're not going to say, oh, the defense turned a corner. No, we're not saying that. All right, we're going to wait until bigger and better opponents come along. But as far as it goes, the defense shoved around Nevada. Bear Alexander, really solid up front. I mean, that defensive line, and particularly against the run. And we know how bad the run fits were in the first, for so much of last season, including early on. And in the first few games of last season, the problem was the run fits, not the busted coverages. And this year, it's pretty much the inverse. But it's good that, the run defense looks pretty reliable, pretty solid. You haven't really seen this defense get gashed the way it did a lot in September of last season. So, baby steps, but certainly I would say a step in the right direction, Tim. What are your general overview level thoughts about the USC defense's performance against Nevada?
Yeah, no, that's a great breakdown of the game. And like you said about how they've treated this as scrimmages. I said, going back to the San Jose State postgame show, it absolutely looked like a scrimmage. This one kind of settled down a little bit. Not quite as much like a scrimmage as before, but you can tell it paid dividends. The fact that you had Rajon Davis getting all that playing time and Tackett Curtis coming out there, and they look great. Yes, I'm gonna pump the brakes. I realize that this was probably the worst team. Well, the worst team that we're gonna play this year, against probably one of the worst offensive lines we're gonna face this year, without a doubt. Although in a minute I'm going to tell you why maybe Stanford might give them a run for their money, but which is strange to say in a Stanford team. But Tackett Curtis had that unfortunate hit. Everyone's going back and forth. It looked to me like it was targeting all the way, but People are saying, no, he came from the side, but the picture they're showing is the picture after his head goes this, and then his head sideways. When initially hits, it looks like it's pretty square. It was by the letter of the law. But the nice thing to see was you had Shane Lee step in, right? He comes in, and you're 5 deep on your middle linebacker room, and he came in at a hell of a game, and he ends up leading the team in tackles with 10 tackles. I mean, that shows you the kind of depth we have going here. These guys, next man up. It's just it's not just some crazy little motto. It actually is happening. And what made that happen is these guys got shared a lot of time during the spring and into fall, and then that first game and in this game. And so when we lose our 2 starting inside linebackers, because that's who they are, those are, Gentry and Cobb will be our starters this year when they get healthy. We've shown that we're now 5 deep at middle linebacker, and that makes me incredibly happy going into the year. But beyond just the defense stuff on that, I know it's early, but PFF grades, some people like them, some people don't. But USC right now through 2 games, as far as the grading, is they're at 15th, and so for overall defense, I know that we played cupcakes, but guess what? If you aren't LSU or Florida State, if you aren't Utah or Florida, you pretty much played a cupcake this week. There weren't many out there, and I'm sure actually Clemson's finding out that maybe Duke wasn't a cupcake, but most teams played cupcakes, and USC's defense so far it has answered the bell. There were 2 long pass plays, one against Domani Jackson, the very first drive, and also one at the very, very end against Anthony Beavers. You take away those 2 plays, and it's the box score looks completely different, right? I mean, we're probably talking about usually gave up 7 points to the starting lineup without our 2 starting linebackers in there. So again, I understand we played Nevada, which is the worst team, but we dominated them like we should.
Yeah, and I would say this, that giving up big plays, two plays were basically San Jose, Nevada's offense, in that first half, and basically over the course of the game, it was just about giving up a handful of big plays, but like in terms of the overall collection of snaps, very few openings for Nevada. You don't want to give up big plays, and we're going to talk a little bit about Colorado and the Pac-12. Later on, and that's obviously a concern going up against Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter. But the number one concern going into this season, Tim, I think you would agree, it was not so much giving up big plays. Not that you want to, all right? No one wants to give up big plays on defense. Yeah. But the number one concern was opponents squeezing the clock, especially with the new clock rules. Clock runs on first downs. 8 minutes, 80 yards, 13 plays. Caleb Williams just sits helplessly on the sideline. That was the ultimate fear. And it doesn't seem right now that the defense, is likely to give up that kind of drive. Now, again, better opponents are coming, but it seems as though this defense so far, it's built a profile where it's going to shut down the run first. And maybe that comes at the expense of some big plays. But if that's how this season's going to go, and you're not going to see opponents unfurl that, clock chewing 7-8 minute touchdown drive, that's good for USC. USC can live with a few busted coverages if you're not giving up the 7 minute, 6 minute scoring drive or the clock chewing drive in the fourth quarter. If this defense can prevent the long, time-consuming drives on a very consistent basis, that means many more possessions for Caleb Williams. That means many more chances for USC to score. So if you give up a 75-yard bomb, well, hey, Caleb Williams can get it right back, and you're not going to get the defense gassed because it's getting off the field. It's not staying on the field. So, if you were to pick your poison, if you were going to pick your vulnerability on this USC defense before the season began, you would say, all right, we might give up a few really long touchdowns. That's going to happen at some point to some degree, but we won't give up the clock chewing drives, as opposed to, well, we won't give up a ton of really big downfield plays, but we're going to get squeezed for these 7-8 minute drives. I would pick give up the big plays, don't allow the long drives. And that's at least, through 2 games. It's early, small sample size. but that is what we seem to have right now. And like if we go through 12 games with the defense stuffing the run and allowing the occasional deep ball, but not allowing very many, if any, drives over 5 or 6 minutes, sign me up. I will take that package of, that collection of weaknesses and strengths. If that's the mixture for this defense, sign me up. I will definitely live with that.
Well, and that's the offense was also losing that part. So don't worry about them squeezing the clock out, because this team's scoring fast, right? They're scoring on 3 plays, 4 plays, minute 30, minute 40 on a lot of these drives for USC. Quick hitting. We do factor in who they're playing, but they are scoring fast. And like you said, there were a number in the last game and in this game. The reason why I brought the explosives, Matt, is because that's where they did run into trouble. Think about Tulane last year. At the end of the day, yes, the defense was bad, but what really unraveled was the end is when they give up those quick scores like they have. And we saw it again. Well, we saw it, against the San Jose State, and we saw it again on Saturday. And once they get those cleared up now, most likely Anthony Beavers won't be out there when we're playing Oregon, we're playing Washington, we're playing Notre Dame. But at the same time, that first touchdown, the play that led up to the first touchdown against Domani Jackson, he's most likely going to be in a rotation, if not our starting corner for the entire year. So that was a little bit disheartening. But the difference is in this game, it wasn't broken coverages. It looked, for the most part, they fixed a lot of those run fits. There were no issues. The edge was set. This guy is a mobile quarterback. He did get some yards on the ground, but really pretty much contained him overall. You didn't see the breakdowns in the secondary like we saw last week, especially on that last play right before the end of the half, where you got a guy just waltzing into the corner of the end zone. So they are tightening things up. The defense was stout and great. I mean, everyone's going to complain. Of course, everyone's going to complain about, the defense. But in this game, there's really not much to complain about. Again, the starters gave up 7 points, a number of 3-and-outs, and looked really tough with a lot of guys out. So it's great to see the depth. And I'm excited to see if they get short up to some of those explosives before we get against the teams where they're really going to hurt us, like Penix or against Notre Dame, where if you make a mistake in the secondary, they're going to make you pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the one thing to keep in mind about USC playing these 2 cupcake games early in the season, you can say, yeah, they're just cupcake opponents. Well, if you're going to bother to play cupcake opponents, you need to look good against them. Like Oklahoma absolutely blasted Arkansas State. Doesn't mean that Oklahoma is fully back. But if you play Arkansas State, you should go nuclear on them. And so USC's defense, when presented with a bad opponent, played well against that bad opponent. I mean, it looked the way a defense should look against an offense of the caliber of Nevada. So it's not as though
Matt, 12.3 yards a play. That's how that shows you, right? That their average run was 10 yards. That's what I mean. When you play in Nevada, you dominate like that. 12 yards a play, really? 10 yards a rush, 18 yards a pass. That's what you do against the Nevadas. And that's why, again, they passed the eyeball test on Saturday.
Absolutely. So if you're going to play the cupcake, you want to look like, a team that, is, a million points better than the opposition. And USC was 52. That is what you should be doing when you're playing a game like that. So to that extent, it seems as though the relative to the San Jose State game, there was definite forward movement. There was definite progression, advancement.